Hello everybody, it's Fufu here and I'm back for another Is Blank a Strong Pokemon Now? This week we will be looking at Snorlax. I did actually post on my community tab a poll to determine which Pokemon we'd be looking at this week, and Raticate narrowly missed out. So definitely check there if you want to determine what we're going to look at next week, because I'll put another poll out there for next week. On John's channel, John, what are we going to be looking at over there?
We're going to be looking at Tauros, once again something that we voted on in the community tab, so that's probably going to be something we're going to be doing on both of our channels in the future. We're hoping that you're already on both channels, but I am very excited to look at both of these very powerful normal Gen 1 Pokemon. We will see if they're still strong now, but I definitely loved using both of them back in the day.
So let's get on with this Snorlax analysis. In terms of Snorlax's typing and stats, its typing is normal, which means that it doesn't have too many weaknesses. It's only got fighting, but it doesn't have too many resistances either. It's only immune to ghost type, so it's fair enough. It's just normal typing. Unfortunately, it won't have any super effective stab, but that's fine. Looking at its stats, its HP stat is insane at base 160. That is so high, one of the highest in the games. And when you also compare that with its attack stat of 110, which is really very usable, and its special defense stat of 110, meaning that it's very specially bulky, this Pokemon is already looking pretty nice. Its defense stat is only 65, but that's not too bad considering the massive HP stat. It still can take some physical hits. Its special attack is only 65, so probably not that usable, and its speed is very low at base 30. Although there are nowadays much slower Pokemon, this is one of the slowest Pokemon out there. So just taking all of that into account, and straight away you can see it's probably going to be a bit of a tank Pokemon because it does have a very good attack stat, but it could potentially be very defensive as well. In terms of its abilities, it has Immunity and Thick Fat, which are both very good defensive abilities. Immunity meaning that Snorlax can't be poisoned, and Thick Fat meaning that it takes resisted damage from fire and ice type hits. These are both really good at reducing any damage taken by Snorlax. And then it's also got Gluttony, which allows Snorlax to eat berries early. So normally berries that would be eaten at 25% health, Snorlax can eat when its HP drops below half. And that's amazing this generation, because there are berries that heal 50% of your health when your health drops below 25%, but this guy can eat them super early and go straight back up 50% when it drops below 50%, so that is amazing. So we've got abilities to stop Snorlax from losing health, and also abilities to help it gain health back. So very good abilities for a defensive tanky Pokemon. That is fantastic.
When looking at Snorlax's moves, it actually has some really solid offensive moves. Obviously, we don't really care too much about the specially offensive moves, so we will be looking at the physical side of things, starting off with Return and Body Slam. Obviously, Return is a little bit more powerful, but Body Slam does give you the chance of getting paras, so that really just goes up to personal preference, or just the set you're going for. If it's a little bit more defensive, maybe Body Slam. If you just want to bash people in the face with Return, that's also awesome. And with the normal moves, you cannot hit Rock types super hard, Steel types super hard, or just hit Ghost types at all. So for the Steel types and the Rock types, we do have Earthquake as a coverage move, which is really awesome. Get some super effective coverage there. And then Crunch and Pursuit for the Ghost types. Crunch obviously doing a little bit more damage. Pursuit, you can actually switch into pretty much every single Ghost type without worrying about it. Then Pursuit trap them so they cannot get away. So both of those things, very nice. And to round it off, we do have the Elemental Punches on Snorlax, which gives it some awesome coverage. That's not something you're going to see a ton on Snorlax, but if you want to be just more offensive rather than a setup set, that could be a really nice final move on this Pokemon. And speaking of setup, I'm going to jump there really quickly just because I just, mentioned it briefly. Curse is the main thing you're going to see on this guy. Curse is fantastic for Snorlax. You're not outspeeding anything at 30 speed. No one cares about that, and your defense is the one thing you're probably worried about. With Curse, you're going to make this Pokemon almost impossible to kill unless someone's going to get a crit on you, and that can be really nice. Belly Drum is something that you can actually use in doubles. I mean, you could get it to work in singles, might be a little bit more difficult. I know there are some teams in the doubles format where Belly Drum is actually something that can be really scary, especially on a Trick Room team. So that's something to look at, especially with Snorlax's bulk. Even though it only would have 50% health, it definitely could still have a chance to tank some hits. And looking at utility, Roar is actually a really nice move there. Again, you can switch in on a lot of different Pokemon if they're set up. You can roar them away. You don't have to worry about them sweeping your team anymore. That can be really clutch. Rest and Sleep Talk obviously go together. There's not really too much to say there. It's going to allow Snorlax to heal up, especially if you're cursing. That can be great. Sleep Talk, you know, even when you're asleep, you can get some nice moves going, whether it be setup or offensive moves to hit your opponent. And the Recycle is going to be great if you do have a Gluttony set with those berries. I mean, if you want to have something like Chople Berry and Recycle, you could do that too. It only has one weakness, so that could be really nice. But in general, this Pokemon, when you think it wouldn't have too many ways to heal itself back up, but this generation, especially with Gluttony now, this is a very tough Pokemon to bring down.
So now let's consider some of the common sets to see how strong it is with them. The first set we'll look at is a single set, and that is a Leftovers Curse Rest Talk set. So this set is just to sit in front of your opponent, set up curses, shore up your lower defensive stat, and rely on your higher special defensive stat just to be able to tank hits naturally. The ability here is Thick Fat, allowing Snorlax an extra 2 resistances, which is very useful, as it only has 1 weakness. It will then have 2 resistances and an immunity, which is a very good trade-off. In terms of EVs, you want to boost your defensive EVs a bit more. You can tailor this as to whichever format you're playing in, but you want probably a little bit of special defense, seeing as though you aren't boosting your special defense, but definitely some defense there as well, because Snorlax's natural defense isn't the highest. So it's going to be Careful Nature, and the attacks are going to be Curse, which is your setup move. It boosts your attack and your defense. So this thing will not only boost its defense to last a lot longer, but it will be dealing the damage after a certain amount of curses. And then you've got Return for the damage. You could swap this out for Body Slam, or you could even look at, because it's only a mono attacking set, you could even consider doing something like Crunch, because nothing is immune to Crunch, whereas Ghost types completely stop the set. You could actually just set up and try and sweep with Crunch, even though it's not a stab move, nothing is immune. And then Rest Talk just to keep this guy healthy. So that is a really cool Rest Talk set using that Thick Fat ability. It's going to be very hard to take down, and it's a very scary set to go up against. You really have to hope that you have a fighting type if you're facing this guy, otherwise it is going to demolish you. It will eat you for breakfast.
Another really scary set that Snorlax can run is actually going to be a Choice Banded set, and this thing is a nightmare. You can switch in on a bunch of different Pokemon. You know you're going to be able to tank the hit. There's a lot of times where you can just force a switch immediately, and this is going to allow you to either bash any Pokemon on their team or just be a dedicated wall breaker. We actually have the immunity ability for that reason. You want to bring this thing in on a lot of walls. They might try and Toxic you to wear you down, especially with the crazy defensive stats, or HP and special defense that Snorlax has. Not easy to break down. Getting some Toxic on there can be really nice, so it can't just stay in there and hit you over and over again with its really powerful moves. The EVs make a lot of sense, obviously. Max attack to go along with the Adamant Nature. 212 special defense, and this could just be max special defense. It depends on what you want. You don't need to invest in the HP. It has 100 and what was it, 60 HP, which is just ridiculous. No reason to put anything more into that. Might as well just put in a special defense. You could put in defense too, it depends on what you think you're going against. And the 44 speed here is not something you need, it's just an example. It depends on the different walls you want to break. You know, if you're going to play in maybe a tiered format, maybe it's just Battle Spot, whatever it just is for singles. Whatever walls you want to make sure that Snorlax can speed creep a little bit, you can put a little bit more, a little bit less, and then you are ready to double edge them in the face. If you want to put Return so you don't have the recoil, you can throw that on there. Earthquake is obviously great for those things that it can't hit normally, rock types, steel types. Pursuit, so that you can get those things. Maybe it's like a Gengar. You switch into that thing tries to get out of there. Pursuit, it is immediately dead. Something like an Alakazam. I know you gotta worry a little bit about Focus Blast, but Snorlax, he can eat a few of those up. And then self-destruct, max attack, Adamant, Choice Band. This is gonna do so much damage to pretty much everything that is not a ghost type. This is a really powerful set, very scary set, and a very fun set to use.
So we've considered 2 single sets, but now let's have a look at what it can do in doubles. Snorlax in doubles much prefers to run the Gluttony Berry set. This can be run in singles too, but it's definitely the more viable set in doubles. And here again, with the EVs, you can play around with this as you want, but this is going to be a curse recycle set. So we've already seen one curse set. For doubles, curse works really well, especially with the recycle, because it's sort of passive recovery. Your opponents can hit you with a couple of moves, you'll get that recovery straight away as you can go for a curse, and once you've got the defense boost, you can then go for a recycle because your opponent will be doing less damage. The attacking moves that it's gone for here are return, and then high horsepower over earthquake. High horsepower is a ground type move. It's slightly weaker than earthquake, but it's single target, so you can choose which of the opponents you hit. That means it doesn't get reduced spread damage, because earthquake would be doing much less damage to both of your opponents than a high horsepower to one of your opponents. It also means you don't have to worry about wide guard on the opponent's side of the field. This could be substituted for something like Crunch if you're worried about going up against ghost types, but I think high horsepower is probably the more valuable move slot here. This set was pretty much meta defining towards the end of VGC 17. It was very scary to go up against. Fighting types were really necessary, and so you had to watch out for this. Other double sets you could look into, Belly Drum, as John's mentioned, is sort of viable in doubles. You can have a really cool team with Trick Room and Psych Up and things like that. So you could try that out there, but I thought it would be best to highlight the Gluttony set so that we've gone over 3 different sets, each with the different Snorlax abilities, to show you that actually all 3 abilities of Snorlaxes are very useful. So that is a really cool fact to note. To really understand how strong a Pokemon is, we need to compare it to other Pokemon to see whether it has a niche and whether it performs its role better than anything else could, because that's what really determines whether it's worth bringing to a battle. So John is now going to talk about one of those.
Diggersby might seem like an odd comparison, but it's actually a really solid one when we're looking at offensive normal types. Obviously, with huge power, Diggersby is incredibly powerful and definitely has a little bit of an edge on Snorlax in a few different spots, just starting with that extra power. I mean, this thing is so difficult to switch in, especially if you put a Choice Band on this Pokemon. It's definitely going to make that Choice Band and Snorlax set seem a little bit weaker, and this thing can really decimate opponents. It also has Stab EQ. A lot of the Snorlax sets we've talked about have had ground coverage. Diggersby, same way, but this time does have that Stab bonus, and that's going to make its Earthquakes as scary as the normal type moves. You know, Return, Earthquake, very scary combination. Not something that a lot of Pokemon want to switch into. Also has priority in Quick Attack, which is really nice. And along with having extra speed, you know, it has the speed and Quick Attack. Snorlax obviously really slow. Having some priority on that Pokemon could be really nice, but unfortunately Diggersby does have that instead. And the final thing, which is crazy, because we've said a few different things, it does have offensive setup. Snorlax does have Curse, but Diggersby has that immediate setup, you know, the Swords Dance and the ability to get a little bit faster and really sweep teams. You know, Snorlax takes a little bit longer with the Curse to really set up and sweep. Diggersby's kind of immediate and just going to smash you in the face. Now, Snorlax does have some things over Diggersby. It does have Pursuit, which can be really nice, especially when you're switching into Ghost types, or just, you know, Psychic types or anything else that's a little bit weakened and will not want to switch out because of the Pursuit scare. It's not as bulky, and we definitely see that with Snorlax's set. There's not many Pokemon as bulky as Snorlax. Diggersby has some bulk, but it's average at absolute best, and you probably don't want to switch this Pokemon in on many things whatsoever. And it definitely has fewer defensive options just in general, you know, less things to recover health, just less in general ways to be defensive. Snorlax can be, you know, physically defensive, especially with Curse. Definitely can be specially defensive. Diggersby in almost every single situation is not going to be defensive. So while Diggersby definitely might be a little bit more offensive, Snorlax is a little bit more well-rounded in this comparison.
For another comparison, I'm going to look at Type Null. Type Null may seem like a strange Pokemon to compare to, but actually, Snorlax and Type Null have some similarities in that Type Null is very bulky when holding the Eviolite. It's got really good defensive stats anyway, and when you boost those, because it can evolve into the Steel Valley, it can hold the Eviolite and get boosted defenses, it becomes incredibly bulky. And its best sets are really Sword Stance Rest Talk sets, so it's that bulky setup again. It doesn't have attack investment initially, but when you get those Sword Stances up, this thing does so much damage. So what does it have over Snorlax? Well, it definitely has more defensive bulk. With the 95 HP stat and a 95 defense stat with the Eviolite, this thing has a lot of defense. It also is very specially defensive too, and it can definitely rival Snorlax on the specially defensive side. It has Sword Stance for setup instead of Curse, which means though it's not boosting its defenses, its attack goes a lot higher, a lot quicker. So it probably is a bit more offensively threatening when you get those Sword Stances up. And it also has a nice little trick in that it has Battle Armor as its ability. This means it can't be crit. So if you are concerned about that, that's not going to happen. There is also an Iron Defense type null set. So if you boost your defenses, much like Snorlax would with the Curse, you can't be crit through those defenses. So once they're there, your opponent is screwed if they can't take you out. So those are a few reasons why Type Null might be slightly better than Snorlax, but actually Snorlax has a ton more over Type Null. And what we're considering there is that its attack stat is immediately higher, so Snorlax's 110 attack is higher than Type Null's 95, and it does have some things like Double Edge that it can use to just have a slightly higher initial power than Type Null. And it definitely has better coverage. So here, Type Null doesn't have Earthquake, whereas Snorlax does, and that is crucial because Type Null struggles with the Rock and the Steel types breaking through those, whereas Snorlax can hit those. They do both have Dark type coverage though, so they can hit those Ghost types, which is really important. And the last thing is that Type Null does have to rely on Rest all of the time, whereas Snorlax has quite a few different choices for recovery. So it can have the Gluttony Berry set, or it can have the Rest Talk set. Meaning that Snorlax generally is a much more versatile Pokemon. It's got better choice band sets, and it has more choices in terms of its bulky setup Curse set than Type Null would with a Sword Stance set. So that means that Snorlax is a little bit less predictable and probably better in the role than Type Null as bulky setup. But these were just some single sets that we were covering. It does have very good double sets too, and there really aren't any other normal type Pokemon that fill the same role as Snorlax with its high physical attack and great special bulk. Nothing really does it the same, and in those double sets you have to fear Curse or Belly Drum. So a really offensive setup set or a defensive setup set, you don't know what you're facing against. This Pokemon has loads of cool, unique ways to threaten your opponent, and when I say threaten, if you see this on Team Preview, you should be scared and you should be planning on how to take Snorlax down. And just for that reason alone, I think that this Pokemon is really strong. It's gained a lot over the generations. This time it even has a signature Z move, though you don't see it used so much. It's just another asset to add to its arsenal. It's really cool, and Snorlax is definitely pulling its weight this generation.
I think the thing that surprises me the most about Snorlax is it's actually pretty versatile, and it used to just be a Pokemon, oh, it's gonna be Curselax, it's gonna be Curselax, but recently, I'd prepare for this Pokemon, I had to be worried about all three of its abilities. It has crazy coverage moves, multiple ways to really destroy entire teams, not just take a hit, maybe set up a curse and you have a little bit of a war there, but this thing can do a lot, and as Sam said, I mean, this is something that was good in Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6, Gen 7, and it's probably gonna be great in Gen 8. It is definitely a strong Pokemon now, and I would definitely recommend you guys trying this Pokemon out as it's a lot of fun to use.
So that's going to be all for this week. Please let us know in the comment section what you think of Snorlax, whether you like it now, whether you think it's gained much this generation, and also please keep an eye out on our community tabs for the polls for the next videos, but definitely go over to John's channel to check out his video over there on Tauros, a really much loved Generation 1 Pokemon. We will be discussing that in detail, whether it's good now or not, and yeah, please go and check that out. But that's going to be all for today. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Fufu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.